What's up, everyone? We are here for another episode of Now You Know. This week, we are joined by one of our title sponsor, Island Auto Group's Executive Vice President, Adam Perlow. Adam deals with a lot of stuff, a lot in service, crosses over to sales, crosses over to employees, crosses over to anything that happens inside the group. And we're very happy to have him, and I think he's going to have some interesting stories for us. So, Adam, welcome to Now You Know.
Thank you. Good to be here, Jeremy.
So, Adam, what we do here is, I'm pretty sure you've seen some of the episodes. We just talk about people's stories. How they got to where they are. The come up, what they're doing now, et cetera, et cetera. So we're just going to get right into it.
Great.
Good. So, Adam, you are the Executive VP for Island Auto Group. So, what does that mean?
Well, it means that I touch all facets of the business, right?
Okay.
So, depending on what's happening, it can be, improving our service operations and customer experience. It can be seeking out new technology for the group to use to provide a more efficient experience.
Mm-hmm.
It can be legal and HR issues that come to the group that need to be explored and handled. It can be working on bringing in data analytics to really think about how we look at our business and find ways to be more efficient, more profitable, and ultimately provide the customer with a frictionless experience. So really it touches many, many facets.
So super customer satisfaction, customer service oriented.
Well, as a group, we are, right?
Yeah.
So everything we do always asks that question implicitly, which is, how does this help provide a better customer experience?
Okay,
right? So,
gotcha.
Yeah.
We'll get back into Island in a little bit, but we do want to hear about how. Let's get to what was your first job ever, how you got into this industry, but you're obviously not an old person, so your first job ever wasn't that long ago. So what was your first job ever?
Yeah. So actually, 11 years old, I started working at my family's Ford dealership outside of Boston.
Really?
Yeah. So my uncle and my father were partners separate from their actual careers in a Ford dealership. My uncle was an attorney in Boston and was doing some attorney work for a Ford dealer who then decided he wanted to sell, and my uncle decided he wanted to be in the car business.
Wow.
And my father was chief of cardiology and decided that he would silent partner with him. So at 11 years old, I was interested, and I went to work at the dealership every Saturday, making $2.50 an hour, and cutting the weeds, cleaning the shop, jumping the cars, moving the cars, whatever had to be done. Definitely getting dirty.
This wasn't on the books.
It was not on the books.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So your dad and uncle were they passive owners?
My uncle was the active owner. My father was
So
a
he was
passive
there
owner.
every day.
He was there every day. He essentially slowed down his law practice
Gotcha.
and became a car dealer.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, this isn't about him, but was he happy that he did that?
Oh, yeah. He loved it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so Ford, all-American vehicle, in Boston. I'm sure that was a big dealership.
Absolutely.
Successful dealership?
Very.
Okay, awesome. So that's your first job, and then you get a little bit older from 11.
Yeah.
Did you stay in the car industry when you were 14, 15?
So I worked in the dealership all throughout until college.
Really?
Yeah. And
Doing different jobs or the same thing?
doing different jobs. Yeah. And learning the business.
Mm-hmm.
And then unfortunately, my uncle had an untimely passing while I was in college.
Oof.
Yeah. And
Sorry to hear about that.
Thank you. So we dissolved the dealership. And when I came out of college, it didn't exist anymore for us as a family.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did you go to college for?
So I went to college for sociology and political science. Liberal arts college that specializes
use
in
that much
the arts.
in the car industry now?
No, but you know what you do use? You use, it's funny you say that. My father used to always say to me that it really is more important from his perspective. It was to, at undergrad, study a broad array of disciplines and become an educated person that you can always go on to graduate school to focus in on what you want to. And that's exactly what he did. I, to that extent, followed that path.
That's very interesting. So now you come out of college, right?
Yep.
Did you pursue any graduate degrees or anything?
I did not.
Okay, and what was your first job out of college?
So my first job out of college was with Coopers and Lybrand, one of the large auditing consulting firms in the world. And it was a very unusual opportunity. I was hired as one of 6 people in the country to come to the auditing department in Boston without any auditing or accounting experience. In fact, to this day, as strange as it sounds, I've never taken an accounting course. And they hired us because they were looking to enhance their communication skills with the CEOs and executives of their clients. So they ran an experiment. They took 6 non-accounting majors and brought us into the mix. And the funny story really about it all is, during the first 2.5 weeks of being at the company, we were in Connecticut with students from all over the country in intensive group training. And everybody around me had just graduated in their accounting class at the top 5% of their class from the best schools in the country. And in the middle of about day 3, this gentleman named Marcus from Greece, who was super bright, turned to me and said, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure. What's going on?" He said, "You seem to know a lot about general business that nobody else here is familiar with, but you don't know jack about accounting." And I laughed and I said, "That's true. I've never taken an accounting course."
That's amazing.
So yeah.
So did you like that job?
The job was very boring and definitely not a fit for my personality. And having grown up in automotive, I knew that was my passion. But it was an exceptional experience for a year of learning attention to detail and really how to look at business from a numbers perspective.
So you say, which is, I think rare to hear, but it sounds like you knew that your passion was in automotive since you were, basically 11 years old.
1,000%. I knew what I was going to do the rest of my life.
Wow, isn't that pretty wild?
Wild, unusual, hard to believe today, right?
Yeah. So are you still passionate about auto?
Absolutely. Live it, breathe it, love it.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, so you have that job now. Obviously, you're bored. What happens next?
So what happens next is the year comes to an end.
What year are we in right now?
I graduated college in 1994, so that's 94, 95. And I spent a year at Cooper's. I'm bored out of my mind. I hate going to work. Really there was nothing about it that I enjoyed, except for the fact that I recognized I was learning a lot.
Sure.
And so I just knew I had to go and vet out the automotive industry, really where I always wanted to be at the corporate level. And so I started networking, and I got an interview with Ford Motor Company in the Boston office.
So did it help that you had a Ford dealership and everything? And
yeah. So when I came into Ford's Boston office, they knew exactly who my family was. Absolutely.
So that's a good thing, obviously.
Yeah. And they actually tried convincing me in the interviews to pair me up with a number of dealers and become a Ford dealer.
Really?
Yeah, even at a young age.
You weren't interested?
I wasn't. At that point, I looked at them and I said, my goal is to run Ford Motor Company someday. That's what I'm focused on.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and of course, I'm sure that made them laugh because it sounded funny coming from a 22, 23-year-old kid.
Yeah, everyone starts somewhere though, right?
Right.
Especially if you knew that that's what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so did Ford give you a shot?
Yeah. So I went through the interview process in Detroit, and they hired me into the Ford College graduate training program, and I moved to Detroit.
Cool. I didn't even know they had that.
They did, yeah. It was a very intense program, and in fact, probably of all the companies I've ever worked at, the most intense interview process I've ever had in my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, how long is that program?
The Ford College Graduate Training Program. So the Ford College Graduate Training Program back then was a program that essentially was, it was a year to a year and a half program, and then they, at that point, would put you in a certain place in the company based on your skill set.
Very cool. I'm imagining it doesn't exist anymore.
I don't think so. Not in the way that it did back then.
Do any exist? Like if anyone was interested in doing it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they've taken different, really. Strategies. I think a lot of the corporate automotive companies now will hire young people right out of college and put them into a regional office and put them into an unofficial program. Ford had the best training in the industry back then. They were known for it, and it was really structured and really well done.
So what's your first role?
First role was not what you would think for a college grad, right? I was answering the phones at the Ford Motor Company Customer Assistance Center in Detroit all day, every day, for a year.
What types of
Yeah.
questions are you
So
receiving
you're answering the phones from any customer who calls the 1-800 number
across the nation?
across the nation, customer who's frustrated, upset, their car's out of warranty, their car broke down again, something happened in the sales process, they're upset with the dealer, and most of the calls start off with an angry customer. And your goal is to help them, stay calm, talk professionally, and try to find a solution for them.
Wow.
And your calls are all being monitored, and you're being reviewed on how you handle those calls.
You must have heard a bunch of choice words on some of those calls.
A lot of F-bombs.
Yeah. I can imagine.
Yeah. And you got to
And we're not
learn.
talking Ford.
No, we're not talking Ford, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's the irony is when I think back, I was at Ford Motor Company for 10 years. And when I think back to my 10 years at Ford Motor Company, as strange as it sounds, that first job was one of the most impactful because, first of all, you're learning it right off the bat, call after call after call, how to communicate, listen, and talk to angry people.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah, no, and by the way, I mean that will almost train you for any job.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
whether it's managing up or down or customers or this or that, everyone gets angry.
Right.
Right. So if you can learn that art of like, let me dissuade these situations, and let me figure out, workarounds, that comes, I mean, it's full circle now because that's basically what you do all day right now.
Exactly. Isn't that ironic? Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, cool. So after Ford, did you go straight to another manufacturer?
So I was at Ford for 10 years, right?
Okay.
And Detroit, and
So
then
95 to 2005, basically?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then and around different parts of the country.
Oh,
Detroit.
really?
Oh, yeah. So I was in Detroit for 2 years, and then I moved to the New York region for Ford. And I was living in North Jersey, then New York City, then Philadelphia.
It's a better region than Detroit, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And then on my 10-year anniversary, life works in mysterious ways. Ford, this was back in 2005, to your point, Ford ran into dramatic financial trouble due to some poor decisions from their then executive at the time, Jack Nasser, and who was a bright man, but he just made some poor choices.
Yeah.
And they decided in one day to close half of their 17 regional offices across the country.
Wow.
And I was working in one of them.
Wow.
So they knocked on my door in Philadelphia, and the regional director said, I have good news and bad news. The bad news is we're closing the region effective immediately, and 90% of the people are losing their jobs. The good news is we want you to move to the new region in Virginia, but we don't have a management position for you, so you'll be in a non-management position while we figure that out down the road. And you have to let us know by tomorrow morning.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's a tough choice.
Yeah, right? That was another pivotal moment.
So
So I went home and I thought about it, and I thought, I just spent 10 years working my rear end off. I was rated in the top 10% of Ford Motor Company across the whole company.
wow.
And I don't say that lightly because that meant the decision was heavy, and because I had a real career with them. And I came in and I resigned.
Wow.
Yeah, I resigned. I said, you know what? Moving to Virginia for a non-management position doesn't feel like the right path for my future.
Trajectory.
I'm going to take a pass and take some time and think about what I want to do.
How long did you take?
Well, so I resigned, and then I spent the next 6 months thinking about what I wanted to do. I did some consulting, and then all of a sudden, a small unknown, at the time, non-respected brand knocked on my door. And you got to remember, this was back in 2005-06, and it was 2006 when somebody from Kia Motors called and said, would you come talk to us?
Wow.
And Kia was not a respected or established brand back then. In fact, they were making inexpensive cars that were focused on, credit-challenged people with big rebates and poor quality.
Sure.
Right? So they knocked on my door.
Did you know of them at the time?
Yeah, so I had been studying the Koreans, Kia and Hyundai, for years, and I had voiced many times to my colleagues at Ford that of all the brands out there, these are the people we should be watching out for because what they're doing overseas is impressive and nobody's paying attention to them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Different than what the Japanese have done, were obviously established doing, or?
Not different only in the sense that the Koreans were not relevant like the Japanese had become. And so the Japanese are now established, they're tier one competitors, and the Koreans are being laughed at.
Yeah.
And I'm reading what they're really doing overseas and realizing their capabilities are impressive and they could make something of this. So I decided I wanted to be a part of it.
Wow. So
Yeah.
you took the position. What was that position?
It was the number 2 position in the Eastern region, a regional sales manager for about 14 states. And I was having, ironically, I was having breakfast for the final interview in New York City around the New York Auto Show with an amazing gentleman named Len Hunt, who had come from being an executive at Audi, Volkswagen, Bentley, and had also started his career many years ago at Ford, though I didn't know him. And he was now the COO or CEO of Kia in the U.S.
Wow.
And we're having breakfast, and he said, "I want to hire you." He said, "What do you want?" And he didn't mean money. He meant, what am I trying to achieve? And I said, well, ultimately, I'd like my own region, and then I'd like to, run the company. And he said, well, come help improve the Eastern region in the next couple of years, and if you really do that, then you'll get your own region. And I came aboard.
Did that happen?
It did.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you joined this company.
Yeah.
I mean, you definitely took a gamble.
Yeah.
Which obviously paid off. You proved, what you basically set out. You said you were going to do, and he was true to his word, and he gave you a region.
Well, unfortunately for Len, again, outstanding, one of the best leaders I've ever worked for.
Oh boy, Len didn't have the chance to give you a region.
Len didn't have the chance to give it to me. Len, in the middle of my time in the Eastern region, my first job, working for another amazing man named Michael Tossi, who was my boss, who became a mentor. Korea dispatched a new executive to the U.S. and headquarters in California, and a Korean national to take over. And he decided he did not want any Americans in senior positions. So Len, unfortunately, was
he was a victim of that.
A victim of that, and a phenomenal guy.
Where'd he end up going?
He went overseas to run, I think, a Toyota Lexus distributorship in other countries. So.
At your time at Kia, did you ever go to Korea?
Oh, yes, multiple times. Probably went to Korea at least 7, 8 times.
What's it like there?
Really interesting.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm imagining you stayed south.
Yes, of course. I did go, though, to the demilitarized zone to take a look at that.
Did you really?
Absolutely. And,
just out of interest?
Out of interest, on a trip arranged by Kia. And we went underground.
Like security? Or?
There is security. What you see is you literally see a separation of lands. North Korea on one side, you're on the South Korean side.
Actual separation?
Yeah, absolute separation with militaries. Absolutely. Yeah.
Was that wild?
Wild, hard to get your head around at first. We went underground and walked all the way underground for a few minutes, and then there's a little window, and through that window you're looking at the other side, which is North Korea. They can be looking back at you underground.
What?
And
are you serious?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a demilitarized
It's like
zone.
at one point you guys are just like
right. You're kind of looking eye to eye. And that's kind of where you stop. Right?
Yeah, any any of those?
Yeah, it's not a very friendly place.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But did you like South Korea?
South Korea is fascinating. It's technologically advanced.
More than the United States?
No, different, similar. I mean, downtown Seoul is like New York City, it's a very intensive, hardworking culture, which is why you can see the many great companies that culture has created.
Yeah,
right?
good barbecue too.
Yeah, good barbecue.
Yeah, it's nice. Those vegetables.
Yeah,
and all that stuff.
absolutely.
Nice. Yeah, they're pretty healthy people too.
Yes.
Okay, that's cool. So you're with Kia for a while. The Len Gen is over, and how do you kind of see like, hey, it's clear that Kia doesn't want Americans in high leadership positions, meaning at the CEO level where you really did want to get to at some point. Is that what made you say, I'm going to leave, or is there a story?
No, well, there's a story. There's always a story. But to be fair, Kia began to evolve and realize that they did need American executives. And so I went on. I was very fortunate. I had a lot of opportunity provided to me by the Korean executive who took over the U.S. And I ultimately was moved to California to become the director of U.S. sales.
Wow.
And
You were the director of U.S. sales.
Yeah, and
How much higher did it get from there?
well, then a couple of years later, I was elevated again to executive director of U.S. sales, a position they created really to keep me from leaving to go do something
So
else.
they just added an executive in front of director.
Well, with some more responsibilities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then ultimately, I became the vice president of U.S. sales and operations for the company. So,
It doesn't get much higher.
so I did
than
get
that.
to
Wow.
achieve what I was after. Yeah.
And how long were you that?
So I was at the company just about 9 years, and I was the I was a VP of U.S. Sales and Operations for just over a year, and then as these big jobs and big companies
What year
go,
is this now? At this point, it must be what, like
yeah.
20,
So
2014?
when I
something
became
like that?
the VP of
Like
U.S.
13, 14?
Was 14. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. It was 14, and the chairman, the Korean chairman,
Did that
and
MSG sponsorship start yet?
yeah, I was actually, ironically, before I became VP, I came back to New York City at the chairman's request to restructure the Northeast. And so they gave me an apartment in New York City. I had my place in California. I was going back and forth, running both teams.
It's tough to be bi-coastal.
It was very tough. I was on red eyes all the time.
Oh, my God.
But we were the sponsor at the time of Madison Square Garden. So the one benefit I had was free concerts and games.
That's
right?
awesome.
Yeah, it was fun. I also met my wife dating about 6 weeks before I moved back to California.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, so everything happens for a reason.
I completely believe that.
So you're there, you're the VP for a year.
Yeah.
Let's just move on. What happened?
So the chairman and I, for the first time in my 9 years there, which was really 8ish years, we had a difference of opinion.
A little disagreement.
Yeah, we did, and I was candid with him. I was honest with him, and he didn't like it. And it would have made for a good movie, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, we'll think about the production. And how did that transpire?
Yeah, so many people may or may not know, but back in 2014, Kia introduced a unusual vehicle called the K900. And that was Kia's first luxury vehicle, right? So
Yeah, it was supposed to compete with the Genesis.
Yeah, right. And Lexus and Mercedes.
Right.
And
it was actually a very nice car.
Gorgeous car.
Very nice car.
Gorgeous car and performed well. But we knew ahead of time as an American executive team that America wasn't ready for in 14
can't trust
a
that.
$65,000 to $70,000 Kia sedan.
Exactly.
Right.
And by the way, I agreed at the time too, and I was 29, and I saw that too.
Right. Yeah. And so you got it, right? I mean, if you were going to spend $70,000 in 2014,
get me a BMW or a Lexus.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right. That's exactly it. And the American executives, myself included, unsuccessfully tried to convince the chairman to put the project on hold and focus all of that investment into our other core product lines in the $20,000 to $40,000 range. And he really was interested in becoming a luxury car company as well. And I'm sure you know the history. Anyone who's been successful at establishing a luxury branch in America, i.e. Toyota, Lexus, Nissan, Infiniti, just as a couple examples, they created separate brands, separate experiences, etc.
Like how Hyundai and Genesis have now done.
Exactly. Not initially, right?
Exactly.
But
by the way, it used to be the Hyundai Genesis.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah. So
you butted heads on that.
We butted heads.
And you weren't backing down, and he wasn't either. And then did he say, "Well, now it's time for you to back down"? Officially?
Yeah. So at that point in time, I had to. It's not that I wasn't willing to execute his vision. I just had to deliver the message to him that, from an analytics standpoint, it was a car that could not be successful the way it was being brought into the U.S.
That is wild.
Yeah. So that said,
you blew the whistle.
If
he dropped the hammer.
Yeah, and he dropped the hammer, and in one day, he separated from the company myself and 5 other senior people, as a way to explain to Korea why the car wasn't successful. And
when you say, let's just be clear, separated from the company.
Terminated.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he
That's a
terminated.
polite way, Jeremy,
He
of saying
terminated
it.
5
Yeah.
of you guys.
Yeah. And by the way, I actually take great pride in that. I had
I agree though. I
yeah
mean, you believed in something.
yeah
Okay. You am. I hate to say this to you, Chairman, wherever you might be at this point, but look who was right. I mean, because
yeah
I know for a fact, and I don't know numbers, okay?
right
Just to be clear, I
sure
didn't research any of this. There is no chance that that K900 was a successful car.
right. It was a complete failure.
Yeah.
Yeah, the car was a complete failure. The company lost money selling every single one,
Sure.
and it just didn't work. It was the wrong time.
Right.
Great idea, wrong time.
Yeah.
And
7 or 8 years too early.
yeah, but but I had such an amazing 9 years at Kia. When you get an opportunity in your life to be a part of a team and take a brand from zero to hero,
It's cool.
it was unbelievable.
That is
right?
awesome. By
It's
the way.
unbelievable.
No,
I mean,
that is very
yeah,
cool. I mean, you
yeah.
were, I mean, you quite literally helped shape that company.
As part of the team, I did. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I know you don't want to,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yes, as part of a team,
Yeah.
you and whoever, I'm sure you still speak
Yeah.
to them.
Oh yeah.
That's a cool
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So why did you decide to say, okay, I'm done with, because it seems like now we're at, what year is this?
That was 2015.
2015, and maybe you didn't decide then. Did you go anywhere else corporate, or did you?
I didn't. No,
Right.
once you achieve and get into a VP of the U.S. position for these huge companies, those positions are not open every day,
Of course.
right? So
You almost have to get that position the exact way you did.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And there was no new Kias or, brands coming out at that point.
Yeah, I mean, all the other companies had their VPs. They were
Right.
good. They all had lunch and dinner with me. I mean, every company you can think of, they were very gracious. They called and said, come have lunch, come have dinner. And I'm talking about CEOs,
Wow, that's
EVPs, all of them. I was very fortunate. I had an incredible audience, and they all wanted to stay in touch in case, right? In case they needed somebody.
Of course.
And when that wasn't happening, I decided to move back to Boston, where I'm originally from. And
I can hear that.
yeah, you can hear it now. And just spend some time seeing friends and family while I was
That's
going
awesome.
to
By
figure
the way.
out.
So how long of we'll call it a break did you take?
So it was probably about maybe 14 months.
Okay. So now you're in 2016, about
Yep,
20, right?
exactly. Yeah.
And now you say, I mean, are you married at this point? By the way.
No, was dating my wife at the time. I was dating, and
Yeah.
she was living in New Jersey. I was up in Boston, and at that point, I said, I think I'm going to poke around the dealership world, and because I don't know if you're familiar with this, but so in the dealership and corporate OEM world, there's long been this thing, and that thing is that that many dealers feel that the corporate OEM people cannot make it in the dealer world. It's a known thing. And by the way, the dealers aren't necessarily wrong, right? Because it is two distinct businesses. They're both auto, very different types of auto. One is corporate, one is grittier, one is more to the ground, right?
Yes.
Day to day, right? Blocking and
I
tackling.
could certainly see that. So you moved back to Boston. Now you want to test out. I mean, is there any reason you want to test out the dealership game?
Yeah.
You got the itch again, or?
Yeah, well, I was out just chatting with people, and I decided to set up some informational meetings with large dealer groups just to talk to them about their business. Wasn't out there asking for a job. I said, hey, I just want to come talk to you about your business. And so I'm sitting talking with them. And the interesting thing that I began to learn as I sat with owners of large dealer groups is that they were under the distinct impression and feeling that a corporate OEM person could not make the transition successfully to the dealer world. And I began to see that as a challenge. I thought, I understand part of their perspective. Part of their perspective, I think, is incorrect. And I think I'm going to reinvent myself.
Wow.
Yeah. So I went and I started talking to large dealer groups in the Boston, New York, New Jersey, Florida area, and had a few offers very quickly, surprisingly. And I also had dealer groups who looked at me and said, respect what you've accomplished. Don't think you'd ever make it in retail.
Mm.
And that got me more excited to try.
Wow.
Yeah. So one of the, obviously, owners of Island Auto Group, Josh Aronson. Josh and I knew each other really well from Kia because he was a Kia dealer. And when I came up at Kia, he came up as a dealer.
Mm.
And Josh and I were really already, had an established personal and business relationship. And so he called just to say hi. What are you up to? What are you doing? And I told him that I really was entertaining an offer from a large dealer group, and deciding between one and another. And he said, well, why don't you come down and sit and talk with myself and my partner Marcello. And I had not met Marcello at the time. And he said, we're in the process of just buying a whole group of stores in Staten Island. And why don't you come down and talk to us? So I came down and I had lunch with them, met Marcello for the first time, which was great. And, and I think they were trying to figure out what they needed, and I was trying to figure out what was right for me. And, ultimately, they, at the time, they had just hired some executives from some big dealer groups. And so our lunch ended with, let's just stay in touch.
Mm-hmm.
And
Keep the door open.
Keep the door open. And then I decided to turn down the offer that came to me from a large dealer group in the Northeast, and keep looking. I was just didn't feel it was the right fit. And then a number of months later, Josh and Marcello called me one day and said, what are you up to? I said, doing some consulting and just looking for the right fit. Why don't you come down and have lunch with us? And I did. And ultimately, here I am.
Wow.
Yeah. That was, that was June 1st of 2016 was my first day.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
And
it's been fantastic.
yeah. And
Yeah.
do you like being back in this world?
I do. First of all, I love what I do. And when you're working for people that you like working for, it makes everything easier.
Sure.
Right. And that's really important. So, I get to work for, Marcello and Josh and the Barons, and they're good people to work for. Right.
Yeah. It makes a big difference.
Yeah. It's the same reason why they're good people to buy a car from. I mean,
Yeah.
When you work for people who treat people right and are respectful and do the right thing, then that flows throughout the whole organization. And that's how your customer ends up getting treated.
Yeah.
And that's really why it's great for people to do business with Island Auto Group. And so it was important to me to make sure that I was working for people that I felt good about, that I respected, and probably even more importantly, that from a moral compass standpoint, do the right thing.
Yeah.
Because that's how I lead my life.
Yeah.
And that's, Marcello, Sherino, Josh Aronson, Ron Barron, David Barron, before them, that's how they run the company. And so it feels good.
That is great. So, we covered your automotive history here.
Yeah.
And it's, I must say, quite impressive stuff I really didn't know. I want to talk to you now about, what do you do to actually decompress? I've only really ever seen you in work settings a couple times. We've had dinners and stuff like that.
Sure.
You have hobbies?
Yeah. So I'm an avid wine collector.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And any specific types of wine that you collect?
So I am 90% red. The rest would be champagne, and pretty much from California, Italy, and France. You can go into sub parts of that of Burgundy and Bordeaux, and I've been collecting for about 25 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah.
You have a wine cellar?
So not in my house yet, but I have off-site professional wine storage.
Was that a thing?
A walk-in locker, yeah.
And it's temperature controlled,
Temperature controlled,
humidity all that
controlled,
stuff. Wow.
And I have wine groups. That's groups of friends that also collect. We get together for dinners and have wine themes, and yeah.
How often do you drink wine?
So I try as a rule not to drink Monday through Thursday,
Okay.
just from
Friday
health
to Sunday,
standpoints.
rules out the door.
Rules out the door.
Yeah.
Bottle gets opened Friday night,
Yeah.
and a special bottle always gets opened on Saturday night.
Really?
Yeah,
Always.
always. Will always treat myself, even if I'm just sitting at home with my wife watching a movie. Will always treat myself to a really special bottle of wine on Saturday nights.
And what about if you are going out to dinner? Which
Yeah, so it's interesting. My friends and family.
they must hate going out with you.
Well, no. So here's the interesting thing, right? So first of all, I would
Because
never.
I always know with my friend, they're like, "Oh, we're gonna order a bottle of wine." I'm like, here we go.
Yeah, here you go. Yeah, well, do you like wine, right?
I do.
Yeah. So, first of all, when I go out to dinner with friends, if they're not wine friends, then I don't make a deal of the wine in any way, shape, or form. I never want to make anybody feel uncomfortable.
Sure.
So whatever's there is there. In fact, I'll let somebody else order the wine because I'm not that guy.
If there's an expensive bottle, would you potentially say like, "Hey, I would really love to have this wine. Like, you guys don't have to do anything, but I'm gonna order it."
No, but I'll tell you what I do. So, a lot of restaurants allow for a corkage fee to bring your own wine.
There you go.
So if you're going out to dinner with me and you're not into wine, but you like wine, I will bring some special wine to share with whoever's at dinner.
Look at you.
Yeah.
That's a nice thing.
Right.
Partially for you, but yes.
Yeah, partially for me. Also share with friends. I believe wine's for sharing.
Yes,
and I don't want to put the financial responsibility on someone who doesn't collect. I don't think it's fair.
Sure.
Right? So yeah.
So what is? I'm just curious. What is your passion for wine? I mean, is it? Do you just love how it tastes? Do you like how it's all different? Do you like the history of it? What is it about it?
I think all the above, but I think when you're into wine and you have the opportunity to try different wines at different levels of quality, you can discern very quickly that there is a dramatic difference in how a more premium bottle of wine tastes, the experience of it, the subtleties of it, the detail of it, and I understand that might sound laughable, funny to some people. I get it.
I mean, listen, there's everybody has hobbies, that are very different, right? I like golf, and
Sure.
I actually tend to like cars. So like, people think you spend money in weird ways, and you like things that, my wife sometimes says to me stuff like, and I like nice watches. Like, I just like those things. It's
Sure.
it's not a, it's, for me, it's not a thing like I like these things because they're expensive.
Right.
It's actually unfortunate that the things I like happen to be expensive.
Sure.
So, I'm the victim. I'm the victim.
Right.
But
You're
no,
a
the point
victim?
is, sometimes my wife will be like, "Oh, like all you care about is this and that," and it's like I can't help it. Like, it's just stuff you like. So, like
Right.
to your point with wine, like I don't think you're doing it for like the hoity-toity reason.
Yeah.
I think you just have a general interest in wine, and it unfortunately, it is also an expensive hobby.
It is an expensive hobby, and it takes years to age some of these wines before they're ready to drink.
Right. So it's
Right?
like
You gotta
your
wait.
your
It's hard.
your investment there is just, you could have tripled it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So wine. Anything else? I mean, I know.
Well,
how about family?
Yeah. So
I remember you recently had a kid not too long ago.
I did. I got married late, right? And I got married in 2018, first marriage. My wife, first marriage. My wife is about 9 years younger than me. She likes to point out during 3 months a year, she's 10 years younger than me.
Okay.
That's really important to her.
Yes, I see that.
And so we had a daughter, Emma, 3 years ago. She turned
How's that
3
going?
in February. Amazing.
You love
amazing.
it?
It's amazing.
Do you like being a father?
Awesome. Love it.
Yeah.
Best job ever.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Fatherhood is amazing. I will
Yeah.
say it's wild to see him grow up too.
Yeah.
Do you ever like have feelings of being an older father? I mean, do you ever think of that?
No, I mean, the only time it's kind of in my face is when I meet the other parents at our daycare and they're all so much younger than me.
Right.
And it feels you notice
And
it,
you
right?
tell them like back in my day,
Right?
it wasn't, yeah.
But having a 3-year-old
Keeps
at this
you
stage
young.
Life keeps me young.
Yeah, 100%.
She's nonstop, and
Yeah.
you think you're the boss. We're not the boss.
No,
We're not.
not at all.
Right? They run us.
Sometimes I just look and I'm like, what the hell's going on here? It's
Right.
my own house, I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't even know what happened.
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. So, got some hobbies. We got your history of automotive down, your history of jobs in general. Are you a car person?
I am. I'm a passionate car person.
Are you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm a product person,
So
really.
what type
Yeah.
of cars do you like?
Yeah. Well, so I like a lot of cars and I own nothing at this moment. Okay.
Right.
Um, and but that doesn't mean I won't someday because I definitely will
Yeah.
when the timing is
And what
right.
will it be? What's the dream car?
You
What
know,
is the dream car?
I'd say right now my top dream car would be like a new Bentley convertible.
Okay.
I certainly I can run the gamut though. If you said to me, could you line up a whole driveway? The driveway would look very different. I'd have like I'd have a pickup truck in there with a plow and just go around and a Dodge pickup truck, and
Sure.
a TRX with all
Oh
the
yeah.
horsepower,
Oh yeah.
and just go have some fun with it. And I'd have the Bentley convertible and I'd probably have a Toyota Land Cruiser.
Yeah.
So my
I could have
interest is all over
30
the
different
place.
cars.
Yeah,
I'm the
right.
same exact way. Half the
Yeah,
time I'm speaking to Will, who produces this, and I'm like, oh, I want, a pickup truck. Then the other time I'm like, oh, I want a Porsche. And the other time I'm like, oh, have you seen this new whatever that came? This Land Cruiser, exactly the same thing.
yeah,
And they're all, and I'm like, I need them all. I can't keep up with it.
yeah.
And then I get nothing. So, okay. So you are a car person. That's cool.
Yeah, definitely. And that was really what got me into automotive. And when I was at Kia, I was really as involved as I could be with a future product.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, what in your mind, right, being with Highland Auto Group for a while, and I'm sure dealing with other auto groups and seeing it, from the corporate level with other auto groups, what does separate Island? Island is obviously the presenting sponsor of this podcast.
Sure.
You work with Island.
Yeah.
Is there a separation, or is it generally like any other auto group, in your non-biased
Yeah.
opinion?
Well, right. Obviously, I'm biased, right?
Yes.
But
Note bias.
yeah, no, right. But we're a different auto group. You can buy the same car 100 different places, but you will have a different experience in 100 different places.
Why?
Um, First and foremost, I've got to give credit where it's due, and I referred to this earlier in the conversation, which is, the ownership of the group, right? So the ownership of this group, Marcello, Josh, Ron, they want people taken care of the right way, and so everybody in the company feels that on a daily basis, right? So as a result, everybody in all of our departments knows that we may not bat 100, we might make mistakes, we might have moments that we wish we could do over, but we're always going to do the right thing by our customer. And we're always going to do the right thing. And since that's how my moral compass is
Right, that
programmed,
matters to you.
it matters to me deeply. And so I don't have to think twice about making a decision to do the right thing by an employee or a customer because I already know implicitly that ownership supports that.
Do you feel like this group is more community based than other groups?
Yeah.
Because I always see doing a million different charity things, and I can't even keep up with it myself, and half the time I have to send this stuff in. So,
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
do
Right?
do you feel like it's a super community oriented place, and only because it's Staten Island, or because of the group and everything?
Definitely because of the group. I
Yeah.
mean, so I mean, when we actually get involved in an event like Christmas time when we collect toys to donate to underprivileged children here in Staten Island, you'll see Marcello, you'll see my colleague Mike Bobson and myself, the general managers. You'll see us go to the actual homes
Sure.
with the police department and celebrate Christmas with the kids and give the toys away. We're invested in it, and it matters to us, right? Yeah.
And it matters to everybody. I mean, I think the community oftentimes rallies around Island too. Very cool. Are there different things that Island does just from like a service perspective? Like, the other day I had to bring in a car for service.
Sure.
And I drove up and I saw these two lights I had no clue what it was, taking pictures of something. Is that just like a technology thing that Island employs? Like, what is it even doing?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. One of the things that we lead with is providing transparency, reducing friction for the customer experience, and making sure that the customer feels that through the use of technology that they're having an elevated experience. And so how do we do that, right? you drive into our service drive, and as you mentioned, something is sending off flashes of lights. It looks like, the paparazzi.
Was that for my
Right?
Tires?
Well, that's the next thing, right? The
Okay.
first thing is a very sophisticated camera system that's documenting for you, the condition of your car when it came in, so that if by any chance we were to nick your car or do any damage to it, we can bring up a video feed of that car instantly and take responsibility for it.
Wow, it's a 360.
It's 360, takes 400 to 600 fast frame, high def pictures and videos of the car.
That's
with
crazy.
LED lights so that every mark on the car is lit up.
Those are very bright.
Yeah, and it allows us to really have an honest conversation about if we have any contribution towards anything that happened to that car while it was here,
Right, sure. Yeah, accountability.
Accountability. Second thing is that car is then, to your point earlier, driving over a very expensive ramp that is taking lasers on the underside of the vehicle and assessing the health.
So that's not a speed
of the
bump.
tires. Not a speed. It feels like one, right?
Yes, it does.
Yep. But so that's essentially giving you a printout, and right when you come in, and it's going to show you if your car is in alignment, if it's out of alignment, if it needs tire rotations, if it doesn't, and the tread depths of your tires. So you as a customer, think about this, Jeremy, right? For years you hear, well, the dealer's telling me I need this, but is it true?
I still feel
right?
that way.
I understand. Consumers do, right? So what we try to do with technology is answer the question with certainty so that there's no ambiguity of, do I need it? Do I not need it? Is it just someone trying to sell me? Okay.
Right.
So when you get this printout from this very expensive machine, without any of our people being involved, if you need it or you don't. And we're not here to sell you something you don't need.
Yeah, at that point,
right?
it's just trusting the technology.
That's
you have
right.
to just say, you either trust it or you don't, and you either want to do it or you don't.
That's
I
right.
got an alert, by the way.
Yep.
And it was actually pretty cool. Will was there for it, and I looked at it, and it said I needed an alignment.
Yep.
And I said to Will on the way there, I was like, I think I might need an alignment. So it's just funny. And then I was with Mike at the time, and he's like, well, if it says you need one, you need one.
Sure.
And, you just, like you say, you choose to trust it or not. And, I did trust it. But the point is, it's pretty cool. I mean, every dealership doesn't have that, I don't think, right?
Do you mean the competitors?
Yeah.
No, absolutely not, because it's very expensive technology.
Yeah.
And
But that's just, you guys bought that for the security of the customers,
Yeah.
To
We
have
want-
peace of mind and everything.
we want the customers to feel that, again, that they have peace of mind. There's transparency to their experience, and it doesn't end there. When your car comes into our service departments, there are pictures and videos being texted to the customer to show them any recommendation that's being made on their vehicle.
That's awesome.
And why it's being made.
Yeah,
right?
that's very cool.
Yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, it definitely feels like we ran through a ton. From your history to your hobbies to why you feel Island does stick out, which is great. This has been enlightening, and I appreciate you joining us here. We will continue to follow along with your journey, and hopefully I'll see you for many years to come. Anything else you want to say to the people?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
It's good to be here, and there's a saying that I live by. I'm not the one who made it up, but you can't buy care. People either care or they don't care. And we're surrounded by a lot of people here at Island Auto Group, whether it's our service directors or our general managers or our sales managers or our owners who care. And that really ultimately is what's felt as a different customer experience here.
Island's got your back.
We have your back and we care.
Thanks, Adam. It's been great.
Thank you.